The blueprint under my fingers turned to ash as my husband's words cut through the room. Your uncle is dead. Theodore Lowe passed away last night. I struggled to process this information as Richard continued sorting mail at our kitchen island, his expression blank, almost bored, as though he hadn't just delivered devastating news about the only father figure I'd ever had. The uncle who'd raised me after my parents died. The mentor I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. My vision tunneled, darkness creeping in at the edges. The architectural journal I'd been hiding beneath our bed, my secret rebellion, lay open on the table between us. Richard tapped it with his finger. By the way, I'm canceling this subscription. $40 a month for something you'll never use again is ridiculous. You're almost 32, Amber. Time to let go of these childish fantasies. My name is Amber, I'm 32, and I was once an award-winning architectural student. This is the story of how I reclaimed my inheritance and rebuilt the life that was stolen from me. When did you find out? My voice sounded distant, hollow. Richard shrugged, not looking up from the stack of envelopes. The obituary was in yesterday's paper. I meant to tell you. Yesterday. The same day Richard had insisted we attend his firm's cocktail party. The same day he'd paraded me around to his colleagues, introducing me as the little woman who keeps things running smoothly at home. The same day I'd overheard him tell his boss that architecture was just a phase she went through in college. The apartment suddenly felt airless, the walls closing in. 10 years of silence stretched between Theodore and me like a chasm. 10 years since I'd chosen Richard over my career, my dreams, my family. 10 years of slowly disappearing. Is there a funeral? I asked. Richard finally looked up, annoyed. Why? You haven't spoken to him in a decade. He disowned you, remember? Because of me. His smile was sharp, proprietary. Besides, it's in New York. We can't afford tickets right now. As though our finances were mutual. As though I had any access to the accounts he controlled entirely. As though the prenup I'd signed at 22 hadn't guaranteed I would leave this marriage with exactly what I'd brought to it, nothing. You're right, I said quietly, the first seeds of rebellion taking root. I should get dinner started. That night, I waited until Richard's breathing deepened into sleep. I slipped from our bed and went to my secret hiding place, the back of the linen closet, behind winter blankets Richard never touched. My emergency fund, $843 saved from selling handmade jewelry on Etsy behind Richard's back. Not enough for New York, but enough for a start. I found Theodore's obituary online. The funeral was in 3 days. At the bottom, a single line changed everything. In lieu of flowers, please direct donations to the Theodore Lowe Memorial Scholarship at Columbia School of Architecture. My uncle, who'd refused to attend my wedding, who'd told me I was making a mistake marrying Richard, who'd gone silent when I'd chosen love over career, he'd created a scholarship in his name. A scholarship for architects. It wasn't much, but it was a thread connecting us, even now. I reached for my phone and did something I should have done years ago. I Googled my uncle. The search results made my hands shake. Theodore Lowe, legendary architect. Theodore Lowe, founder of Lowe Design Group. Theodore Lowe, worth an estimated $47 million. I scrolled further, finding an article dated 6 years ago. Architectural visionary Theodore Lowe converts 5th floor of Manhattan brownstone into studio for estranged niece. He had built a space for me, years after our falling out. Years of silence, and he had still believed I would return. Richard found me the next morning, still at the computer, a plan forming. What are you doing? He asked, voice sharp with suspicion. Research, I said, closing the browser. For dinner tonight. I thought I'd try something new. His eyes narrowed. Don't get fancy. We're having the Carlsons over, and Janet's allergic to everything. I nodded, already planning. The Carlsons, Richard's most important clients. The dinner party he'd been planning for weeks. The evening he needed to be perfect. 3 hours later, I was in our bedroom, telephone pressed to my ear, speaking quietly. Victoria Kennedy? My name is Amber Lowe. I'm Theodore Lowe's niece. My maiden name felt foreign on my tongue after years as Amber Foster. I just learned about his death and I have some questions. The attorney's voice was professional, guarded. Ms. Lowe, I've been trying to reach you for days. Your husband said you were unavailable. Ice formed in my stomach. My husband spoke to you. Yes. Mr. Foster informed us you had no interest in your uncle's affairs and would not be attending the funeral. My fingers tightened around the phone. That's not true. I didn't know Theodore had died until yesterday. A pause. I see. In that case, Ms. Lowe, there are urgent matters we need to discuss. Your uncle's will specifies. I'll be in New York tomorrow, I interrupted, decision made. We can talk then. I hung up, heart racing. Richard had intercepted calls from Theodore's attorney. He had lied. He had known and hidden it from me. That evening, as the Carlsons arrived, I served Richard's favorite scotch with dinner. The same scotch I'd mixed with crushed sleeping pills while he was in the shower. Nothing dangerous, just enough to ensure he'd sleep through the night while I packed a small bag and emptied our joint checking account. It wasn't theft, I reasoned. It was 10 years of unpaid labor. 10 years of dreams deferred. 10 years of being made invisible. By midnight, Richard was snoring in our bed, the Carlsons long gone after a successful dinner where I'd played my part perfectly. By 1 a.m., I was in a taxi headed for the airport, a one-way ticket to New York purchased on Richard's emergency credit card. At 6 a.m. Eastern Time, after a red-eye flight and a taxi ride through the awakening city, I stood on the steps of a magnificent brownstone in the West Village, the address I'd found in Theodore's obituary. A silver-haired woman opened the door, her eyes widening. "My God," she whispered. "You're the spitting image of him." "My name is Amber Lowe," I said, voice stronger than I felt. Theodore was my uncle. The woman, Margaret, Theodore's housekeeper for 30 years, ushered me inside. The brownstone was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits. 5 stories of Victorian elegance mixed with modern innovation, every corner reflecting Theodore's brilliant mind. "He never gave up on you," Margaret said as she led me upstairs. "Never stopped hoping you'd find your way back." Victoria Kennedy arrived an hour later, leather portfolio in hand. We sat in Theodore's study, surrounded by architectural models and awards. "Your uncle's will is quite specific," Victoria began, opening her portfolio. "You are his sole heir, Amber. The brownstone, his Ferrari collection, investment properties across 3 states, and controlling share of Lowe Design Group. The firm is worth approximately $47 million. My hands trembled. There must be a mistake. He disowned me 10 years ago. Victoria's expression softened. "Mr. Lowe never removed you from his will. You were always his sole beneficiary. However, there is one condition." My stomach dropped. "What condition?" She met my eyes. "You must take over as CEO of Lowe Design Group within 30 days and maintain the position for at least 1 year. If you refuse or fail, everything goes to the American Institute of Architects." I laughed bitterly. I haven't worked a single day as an architect. I graduated at 21, married at 22. My husband made sure my education remained a cute hobby. Victoria's voice was quiet. "Mr. Lowe hoped you'd eventually return to architecture. This is his way of giving you that chance." Margaret entered with tea. "The 5th floor," she said. "You should see it." We climbed the stairs to the top level of the brownstone. Margaret unlocked the door and I stopped breathing. A designer's dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the village. Massive drafting tables. Expensive computer setup with multiple monitors. Drawers filled with pristine supplies. On one wall, my college exhibition sketch was pinned to a bulletin board, the sustainable community center that had won first place, the one Uncle Theodore had been so proud of. I touched it gently, tears blurring my vision. The edges were yellowed, but the lines were still sharp. He'd kept it for a decade. "He had this space converted for you 8 years ago," Margaret explained. "He called it his act of faith." My phone buzzed. Richard's name appeared on the screen. I declined the call. 2 minutes later, Victoria's phone rang. She answered, her expression professional. "Yes, Mr. Foster. I understand your concern." "No, I'm afraid that's incorrect. Your wife is Theodore Lowe's legal heir." "No, a prenuptial agreement doesn't override a legal will. I suggest you consult your own attorney." She hung up. "Your husband seems quite concerned about your whereabouts. My office must have called your home number from our records when we couldn't reach your cell phone. That's probably how he found out about our meeting." "Ex-husband," I corrected, the word tasting like freedom. "I just haven't filed the paperwork yet." The first board meeting at Low Design Group was exactly as hostile as I'd expected. 8 senior partners sat around a polished conference table, all looking at me like an unwelcome intruder. A man in his 50s named Patrick leaned back in his chair. With all due respect, Ms. Lowe has never worked a day in this industry. This decision shows Theodore wasn't thinking clearly in his final months. I pulled out one of my 17 notebooks, journals filled with designs created during the rare hours Richard was away. My secret rebellion, my lifeline to sanity. Actually, Mr. Buchanan, my uncle was thinking perfectly clearly. He knew this firm needed fresh vision, not the same old guard clinging to past glory while the industry evolves around them. I slid the notebook across the table. This is a sustainable mixed-use development I designed 3 years ago while my husband was at a conference in Chicago. Rain gardens, green roofs, parametric facade design, passive solar optimization. I have 16 more notebooks like this. 10 years of designs created in secret because my ex-husband thought architecture was a cute hobby that distracted me from keeping his house clean. Patrick flipped through it, his expression carefully neutral. But other board members leaned in, interest piqued despite themselves. A woman named Olivia spoke up. Even if your designs show promise, running a firm requires business acumen, client relationships, project management. You lack practical experience. I nodded. You're absolutely right, which is why I'll rely heavily on the existing team, particularly Marcus Ryan. I looked at the senior partner who'd been quietly observing. I'm not here to pretend I know everything. I'm here to learn, to lead, and to honor my uncle's legacy while bringing new ideas. My first major challenge came 2 weeks later. The Waterson project was a cutting-edge Chicago headquarters for a tech billionaire, sustainable, statement-making, exactly what Low Design Group was known for. I'd spent 3 weeks on the design with our engineers, pouring everything I'd learned over a decade of secret study into the plans. At 9:45 on presentation morning, I arrived to find my laptop missing from my locked office. Patrick appeared in the doorway holding it. "Found this in the break room," he said. "Someone must have moved it." I opened the laptop and my stomach dropped. The presentation file was corrupted. Slides jumbled, images missing, renderings replaced with error messages. I had 30 seconds to decide: panic, postpone, admit defeat, or do what Theodore would have done. "Actually," I said, closing the laptop with a smile, "let's do this differently." The tech CEO, James Waterson, raised an eyebrow. I moved to the whiteboard and started sketching, my hand moving with confidence built over 10 years of secret practice. "Mr. Waterson, you said you wanted a building that tells a story. Let me tell you that story." I drew the building's silhouette, explained how the shape was inspired by the Lake Michigan shoreline visible from the site, how every angle had purpose. "Traditional architecture treats buildings as static objects," I said, sketching details with colored markers Marcus handed me. "But your headquarters will be dynamic, alive. In summer, the smart glass darkens automatically, reducing cooling costs by 40%. In winter, it opens to maximize passive solar heating." By the time I finished 45 minutes later, the whiteboard was covered in a comprehensive representation of my vision. Raw, honest, clearly genuine passion. Waterson stood, examining the board closely. "This is exactly what I wanted. Someone who understands buildings as living systems. When can you start?" After they left, having agreed to terms immediately, Marcus was grinning. "That was extraordinary. But someone corrupted your files deliberately. This was sabotage." I nodded. "I know. It doesn't matter. Patrick wanted me to fail. Instead, I showed everyone I don't need fancy presentations. The work speaks for itself." That evening, I called an emergency board meeting with Victoria as legal counsel. Our IT department had traced the file modifications to Patrick's computer by examining the login records and file access timestamps in our secure server system. He resigned the next morning. The company bought out his 30% stake at fair market value. But the real discovery came when Margaret found a leather-bound journal behind Theodore's architecture books. "Your uncle kept a diary," she said, handing it to me. "Many entries are about you." The journal covered 15 years, from when I first lived with him to weeks before his death. One entry stopped me cold. March 15, 10 years ago. Amber married Richard Foster today. I refuse to attend. Margaret says I'm being stubborn and cruel. Maybe I am, but I can't watch someone I raised walk into a cage with her eyes open. All I can do now is wait and hope she finds her way back. Another entry, dated 8 years ago, started building the studio on the 5th floor today. Margaret thinks I'm foolish, preparing a space for someone who might never come home, but I need to believe she will. The studio is my act of faith. The final entry, written 8 weeks before he died, I'm dying faster than expected. Pain is considerable, but I'm content. Victoria has instructions to find Amber after I'm gone. The rest is up to her. She'll either take the challenge or find her own path. Either way, she'll be free. That's all I ever wanted. 6 months into my role as CEO, a familiar name appeared in my calendar. Richard Foster had scheduled a meeting citing personal business matters. I almost cancelled it. Then I reconsidered. Some confrontations needed to happen face to face. Richard looked different when he entered my office, smaller somehow, less intimidating. He sat across from me, eyeing the view of Manhattan from my 32nd floor corner office. Impressive, he said. You've done well for yourself. What do you want, Richard? He leaned forward. I think we should discuss reconciliation. This separation has gone on long enough, don't you think? I'm willing to be generous. We can divide your time between New York and Seattle. I stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. The controlling man who had systematically dismantled my confidence. The husband who had intercepted calls from Theodore's attorneys. The partner who had made me believe I was worthless without him. You lied to me about Theodore's death, I said quietly. You spoke to his attorneys without telling me. You tried to prevent me from claiming my inheritance. Richard waved dismissively. I was protecting you from disappointment. I knew he'd cut you out of his will after you chose me over him. Except he didn't, I countered. You just wanted to make sure I remained dependent on you. Tell me something, Richard. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me, or did you just want someone you could control? His face hardened. Don't be dramatic, Amber. Of course I loved you. I gave you a beautiful home, a comfortable life. A cage, I interrupted. You gave me a cage, just like Theodore said you would. And now you want me back because I'm successful, because I have something you want. I opened my drawer and removed a manila envelope, sliding it across the desk. Divorce papers. My attorney has already contacted yours. I'm keeping my company, my inheritance, and my name. You can keep everything else. Richard's face flushed with anger. You think you can just throw away 10 years? You'd be nothing without me. I made you who you are. I smiled, feeling truly powerful for the first time. No, Richard. You tried to unmake me. The difference matters. Security escorted him out 20 minutes later when he refused to leave voluntarily. That night, I stood in Theodore's, now my, rooftop garden, looking at the city stretched below, full of buildings designed by people with dreams and determination. The Low Fellowship launched 3 months later. We selected 12 students from 300 applications, offering $45,000 annual stipends plus housing vouchers. Emma Ramirez was 22, designing homeless shelters with community gardens. My family didn't understand why I wanted to study architecture instead of nursing, she told me nervously on her first day. I smiled. Let me guess. They said it was a nice hobby, but not a real career. She nodded. People who don't understand passion will always try to diminish it, I said. My ex-husband spent 10 years telling me my degree was a cute waste of time. Don't let anyone make you small for dreaming big. The program was demanding, but by November, Emma's community shelter design had attracted attention from a Brooklyn nonprofit. They wanted Low Design Group to lead the project with Emma as primary designer under supervision. 6 months later, Felix Chan, CEO of a rival firm, made an unexpected offer, $300 million for complete acquisition of Low Design Group. The board gathered in the conference room, Olivia presenting the terms. Given your 51% ownership, the decision is yours, Amber. I didn't hesitate. No. Theodore didn't leave me this company so I could sell it to someone who represents everything he fought against. Olivia smiled. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say. Theodore included a provision in his will. If you rejected any substantial acquisition offer, you'd receive an additional trust he established. $30 million unrestricted for understanding that some legacies can't be bought. She handed me a velvet box. Inside was a ring, a simple band with architectural blueprints etched into the metal. The note read, "Amber, this ring belonged to your great-aunt Eleanor, who was an architect in the 1950s when women were actively discouraged from the profession. She faced barriers you can't imagine, but she never compromised her vision. Build bravely, live boldly, and never let anyone make you small again. I'm proud of you." We used the 30 million trust to launch a nationwide public architecture initiative. Libraries, community centers, public spaces designed with the same care usually reserved for luxury projects. Emma led the design for the Philadelphia Community Library, her first project as lead architect. 5 years after taking over Low Design Group, I stood in Richard's former office in Seattle. His firm had gone bankrupt after losing the Carlsons and several other major clients who had quietly shifted their business to Low Design Group's new West Coast division. Our divorce had been finalized 4.5 years earlier, with Richard fighting every step of the way, but ultimately signing the papers when his attorney made it clear he had no legal grounds to claim any portion of my inheritance. The space would become our Pacific Northwest headquarters. Richard's name had been removed from the lobby directory. In its place, Low Design Group Sustainable Architecture Solutions. That evening, I returned to the brownstone rooftop where this chapter began. Marcus was in the studio working on sketches for a Detroit children's museum. Margaret had dinner waiting. I stood in Theodore's garden, fingering the ring that had belonged to my great-aunt Eleanor. I thought about the woman who had left Seattle in the middle of the night, terrified but determined. I wished I could tell her the most important thing: she was already everything she needed to be. She just needed time and space to remember it. My personal life had blossomed in the years since leaving Richard. I'd reconnected with old friends, made new ones through the firm and fellowship program, and even started dating again on my own terms. The relationship was still new, just 6 months, but it was built on mutual respect and shared passion, not control. If you've ever felt small, dismissed, or written off, remember this: your essential self remains, waiting for you to reclaim it. Transformation isn't a one-time event. It's a daily choice to rebuild yourself, stronger than before.